support physical games. So it was recently announced that the game Mouse P.I. for Hire, which you've probably seen, it's kind of like that 1930s cartoon FPS game. So that is made by a small team and it is getting a physical release. And not only that, for Nintendo Switch 2, it is fully on the game card. It is not a game key card. And it seems like just every game coming out from a third party for the Switch 2 now, it is on a game key card. And while that is better than just fully digital, it still is an issue because you don't really own the game. Like, let's say for whatever reason, like the Switch 2 couldn't connect to internet anymore, you wouldn't be able to play that game. It would literally just be just a useless piece of plastic at that point. Like, for people like myself and probably a lot of you, like, we like to actually own the games, like have the game on the disc or the cartridge. And it's not the easiest thing to have physical releases anymore, especially for a smaller team. For a AAA company, it still is. For like small indie companies, they usually have to go through like limited run games or something like that, and that's just a limited release. That's for collectors mostly. But no, this is going to be in stores on Amazon, and it's going to be very reasonably priced. The PS5 version is $30, the Switch 2 version is $40, and I know it's $10 more, and if it was on a game keycard, I would have a problem with that, but since it is at least fully on the game cartridge, I understand it. There's also a collector's edition that's $50 on PS5, $60 for Switch 2, and you're actually getting a lot for that. Like, you're getting a vinyl, you're getting a map, you're getting like a comic with it or something. That's a pretty good deal in my opinion if this game interests you. But I wish we'd see more of this from indie companies, and I'm not blaming them because you have to get a lot of support beforehand. You have to have like a lot of attention on the game because it does cost a lot of money to actually produce these physical copies. You don't know how it's going to sell. Like, more often than not, physical copies of indie games come out after through, like I said, limited run games. Sometimes they'll get a physical release after if it's really popular. And even beyond just game ownership, which I'll talk more about, it's just nice to own the physical game for me, at least. Like, when I was a kid, there was always something about just going to a GameStop or a Best Buy or Target and getting that physical game, putting the disc or the cartridge in the system, and even like the 2000s, early 2010s, when there were still manuals, which I get why it's not there anymore, but it was still nice. Like, there was just that feeling of having that physical game. And even now, like, I like to get a physical game, I like to put it on my shelf, because getting a digital game just isn't the same. Now, if it is a smaller indie game, I'm not going to hold it against them, like, for just going digital only, because it's not realistic for most developers, most publishers to do a full retail release when they're just a small team with a very small budget. But I really don't like the trend of AAA companies just not having physical releases, and the trend of consoles now not even having disc drives is even worse. An example of a AAA game that didn't have a physical release in the past few years, Alan Wake 2. So it does have one now, it got one later on, like the deluxe edition, and it's a fantastic game, by the way, but it didn't have a physical release at launch to my knowledge, and that just kind of sucks because there's no excuse for it. It's a big AAA game. It's not even a brand new IP, like, it's a sequel to Alan Wake, which was a popular game, and luckily we did end up getting the physical copy, but that doesn't always happen. And besides that, besides just not getting like a retail release at all, there's been Xbox games that just don't have any data. Some I think are just download codes. The Switch 2 has had that. Then there's discs that just don't have any data on them, Switch 2 keycards. And it's a very worrying trend because I feel like more developers or more publishers are just going to be going this route because it is objectively cheaper to have one of these game keycards with no data on it. The reason that a lot of these games are on game keycards, even when they're small games, is just because I think the Switch 2 only has 64 gigabyte cartridges, and I think they may be changing that, but up until this point, I believe they've only had the one 64 gigabyte cartridge. So if a developer is making a 4 gigabyte game, like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense for the publishers, and I do get it. And then I know this, like, with bigger games, apparently running it from the micro SD or the system itself is faster than running from the cartridge. I don't know all the details of the technical side of that, but I just don't like the direction we're going in, and we've been going in this direction for 20 years now. So if we go back to the PS2, the Xbox, the original Xbox, and the GameCube, if you wanted a game, you bought the physical game. And then when the 360 and the PS3 came out and they had digital storefronts, it was a big thing at the time. You could play any game you want just by downloading it to your console. And it gave indie developers a real chance to really grow in the industry. Because before that, if you wanted to get a game on console, you had to have a physical release. And the Wii didn't have like the full retail games on the Wii shop, but there were indie games, there was Virtual Console. And stuff like that was really cool to have just as something you could download. But then once we got to the Xbox One, PS4, even the Wii U and 3DS, that's kind of when digital started taking over. Like, we stopped seeing manuals and game cases, and the push towards digital really started to ramp up because Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft, they make more money from digital games because that's on their platform. And not just those companies, but the publishers as well, because they don't have to make a physical product. It's not that expensive to make a physical game. but it's all about margin. Let's say it costs $15 to produce the case and the disc for a game, and you're selling that game for $70. That's $55, but then that's not it. A retailer is selling that game, so they're getting part of that, so it's not just direct. In a digital storefront, there's no middleman. You buy it on there and you have it. You don't go through any retailer or anything. You don't have to produce anything. So it is cheaper and it is more convenient. It is more convenient to just download a game, not have to worry about storing the disc or putting the disc in the console. It is objectively more convenient to have a digital game, but it is not objectively better. Now, it does all come down to personal preference, but for me, one of the reasons I prefer physical games, besides just wanting to have it on my shelf, like having like a tangible game, is that if you look at a lot of games on the 3DS or even games from last gen that just were taken down from digital storefronts, you can't buy these games anymore. Like you cannot, like they're delisted, which means if you want to download them, you cannot. I think if you already have them, you can. I know on 3DS you can, but if you don't already have the game, then you're out of luck. So if there's physical copies of it, that's your only hope, unless you want to go through other ways to play it, which it's not always convenient. A lot of people don't want to go through that. Like I personally prefer to play my games legit. So there are games on the 3DS that are lost to people, like the Pushmo games, like the Box Boy games, for example, like Rusty's Real Deal Baseball, which I covered in another video, which I fortunately do have. But these are games that were digital only, and now since those digital storefronts were shut down, there's no way to play them. The only official way you can play them now is if you buy a console that already has them downloaded. And with the prices of 3DSs nowadays, I don't think anyone's going to spend $400 for Pushmo or Box Boy. So you're pretty much out of luck there. If there's physical copies, then that at least gives you another option. Sure, it might be more expensive, but it would be a lot cheaper than having to spend $400 on a new console. Something I actually saw recently, which was interesting, was the Deadpool game on last-gen systems was delisted, and now the physical copy is worth a lot of money, since that's the only way you could get it now, so it's like worth $100 or something. And while I don't sell my games, if that's something you don't care about, like you don't care about holding on to your games, if you just want to play a game and then sell it, it makes gaming a much more affordable hobby. Like, let's say you bought Resident Evil Requiem on launch day for $70. You played it, liked it, but then you don't want to play it again, or you don't want to play it for a while and you want to sell it so you can play another game. You probably could go on eBay and sell that for close to price. Like if you sold that for $60, it would be sold immediately. And sure, there's fees on there, like you're not going to make all your money back, but you could potentially make $45-50 in profit from that. So in essence, making that a $15 or $20 game. So that is a way to look at it for me. Like I like to hold on to my games, but I can understand someone doing that. For me, the most concerning thing about a digital only future is that once again, you don't actually own these games. You basically own a license to play it. There have been multiple examples, fairly recently I think, where games have just been removed from people's libraries. And besides the fact that you paid money for that game and just had it removed, and that's complete BS. Like, let's say they even give you your money back, that's still your product. You may not have wanted them to take away that game. With a physical game though, you always have that game. Like, they can't take that away from you. Like, is that the future you want to live in, where game companies can just remove games whenever they want? Like, you don't actually own anything? Now, I'm not against digital games, because I think it's fine if you want to get, like, a game that's on, like, a huge sale or something, or an indie game that is not physical only, or an indie game that isn't on a physical copy, or has expensive physical copies. But at least having the option, like the saying, you'll own nothing and like it, is becoming more and more true as we go more towards a digital-only future. And with Switch 2 game keycards, I guess that's better, because I don't think they can just say... Because I think if you have the actual cartridge, even if the game was delisted, I think you would still be able to download it, but who knows with that? So getting back to my original point in this video, is just support physical games. Not only do you get more agency with it, do you have actual ownership, but physical games are often cheaper. Like, I can't tell you how many games I've gotten that I would have never paid full price for, but I've been able to get them fairly cheap, whether through eBay or even Amazon or just used copies of games wherever. Because with digital games, the only price that is going to exist is going to be the price that's on that platform. Like, if you're on console, the only way to get a key for that, at least legit, is on the PlayStation Store. They control that. When there's physical games, there's going to be some competition. People can resell their games, and that's usually going to lower the price. Like, go to pretty much any $70 game that's a year or more old now, maybe even less than that, and it's probably not going to go down in price for a little bit. But if you go to eBay, you go to Amazon, GameStop, you're probably going to find cheaper copies of the game. So unless you're on Steam, because Steam games, like, there are pretty good digital sales on there, because Steam has competition on PC. Like, obviously there are other platforms, there's other ways to buy keys on PC, so that's why they have the cheaper prices. But for consoles, physical games are the only thing that is keeping prices from not just staying at $70 permanently pretty much, or not the only thing. Like, prices would still go lower as sales dwindle, but it would be a much slower process. I'm glad that there are a lot of companies now that are preserving physical games. Like, everyone knows limited run games. I know they've had their issues, but there's others. There's Fangamer, there's Super Rare Games. Now I haven't ordered from all of them. I've gotten limited run games before, but I just think what these companies are doing, if they're actually legit, if they're making a good product and actually sending the product out on time, then it's a very good thing that they're doing, that they're giving a lot of these games a full physical release. So even if these games are ever delisted for any reason, there will always be a way to play them. Plus again, it's just nice to have that physical game. Like, there are games that I have digitally, like whether it's like through PSN or whether I just got it for like super cheap or something. And sometimes I'll really like a game and want to get a physical copy of it, just either to support the developers or just have that in my collection. Like something like PSN, I actually do like PSN just because you get a lot of games, and some months you don't really get anything good, but I've gotten quite a lot of pretty high quality games on there. Like, that's how I played Alan Wake 2, which I loved, so I picked up a physical copy of it. And in that case, like, you're not paying for that digital game, you're paying to play online, and you're getting that as a benefit. But the only times I'll buy a digital game that has a physical copy is if it's just far cheaper, or if it's far cheaper, pretty much. Or if it's like a sports game. Like, occasionally I'll get a sports game, and I don't really care that much about having physical copies of those, since you play them for a year and that's it. But if you're someone who prefers digital-only games, that's fine, that's your right, I have no problem with that. I understand the benefits of it. I know that some people want that convenience, some people don't have the space to store these games. But I would just ask you to consider some of the things that we've already seen happen, like with games being delisted and removed from libraries, and how that can happen again. So if you are serious about game preservation, or if you're even looking for cheaper games if you play on console, just look more into physical games and support developers and publishers that are still making physical games, even when it may not be the easiest thing for them. Like with Mouse P.I. for hire. Like, I wasn't expecting this to have a physical release, especially this early on. Like, I thought maybe if the game did well, it would get like a limited run games release or something like that, or a retail release like later on. But we're getting it soon. I think it comes out in July. And the Switch 2 version is fully on the game card, so we should be encouraging that. And if you are someone who is very vocal about supporting like Switch 2 games actually being on the game card, and I'm not saying if you want to get this on PS5 to just get it on Switch 2 just because, but even though it is more expensive physically, I would say to just consider getting that then, if you already were interested in the game, if you want to send a message to keep having games released like this. Anyway, that's my rant on this topic. I want to know your thoughts on this. Do you prefer digital or physical games? If you like this video, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.